Still dancing. All
Such
the
a
time.
good jingle.
Every time, every episode. Hello, everybody. Hello, lovely people. Super happy to have another Kubefirst live. It's good too because it's quite busy at Kubefirst in the last couple of weeks. Some of you may have seen things floating around. We are working on some amazing things, but I'm stopping here. It's just nice also to take a break, talk with friends about technology, and doing that live stream. And today, that's going to be quite interesting. We have 2 or 3 types of shows that we're doing. Usually we have a show that is like really specific about Kubefirst, like technology within Kubefirst or how to use specific parts of the platform. We also done a lot of shows with guests that came to the show to talk about their cloud native technology. And we have a third type of shows, which is what we're going to do today. It's more, discussion with expert in the industry. And today's going to be quite amazing because we're going to talk about one of the topic I like, which is infrastructure as code. And to do that, we have Matt with us. Matt, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Thanks, Fred. I'm excited to be here, and it should be cool. I run a company called Masterpoint, Masterpoint Consulting. We are what we like to call an infrastructure as code consulting firm, agency. We really love helping our clients migrate, automate, and innovate their infrastructure as code. So really helping them take their cloud or on-prem infrastructure and make it repeatable, make it easy to manage and sustainable. Quick example of that is we just had a client who was on Terraform Cloud. They had a big Terraform, what we call a Terralith, a big Terraform project that had 40,000 resources in it. And we took that project, we split it up into 500 different projects because they were all very similar sets of resources. And we migrated them from Terraform Cloud to Spacelift and onto OpenTofu, which I think we'll be talking about. So that's the type of thing that we do is help people with their IAC workloads and really helping them get all the pieces right, doing the best practices, making sure that that's not the hindrance to their organization that it can be. So check us out. We have a newsletter, all the things, a blog. I post a lot on LinkedIn, and we'll be talking about some of the content that we publish during this call, I think. So that'll be good. Anyway, that's us.
We will. And thanks for introducing yourself. Before we jump to the topic, first, I need to say you are the guest with the most amazing background we ever had on the show. Live from nature. I think you cannot ask for a better place to do a live stream, I guess. Pretty amazing.
I'm in beautiful British Columbia right now. I'm climbing with friends this week. I have a week off, working a little bit. This is a nice rest day for me, but I'm in Squamish, and it's really, really nice. We had some rain in the beginning of the week, and now it's perfect temps. I'm going to go climbing after this call, and it should be a good day, a good rest of the week.
Eat your heart out.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thanks for taking the time to join the live stream. I really appreciate it. And you know what, John? It's been forever that we did not introduce ourselves. So before jumping into the topic, who are you, John?
Who am I? That man. I ask myself that every day. I am John Dietz. I am co-founder of Kubefirst and CEO. And just kind of spent my entire career in the DevOps space in a whole bunch of different sections, from QA to big data to development to cloud administration. And then cloud native happened, and I fell in love and threw everything that I cared about away. And I've been riding the Kubefirst wave ever since. So it's a pleasure to be on the show, as always, with you guys. Fred, let me pay you the same courtesy and ask you to introduce yourself to the world.
I will do that. So I'm Frédéric Harper. I'm the principal developer advocate at Kubefirst, and I'm the social, approachable, technical, friendly face of the company. It's a little bit weird to say that because I have been introducing myself for years. because I was one of the only person in the company being a friendly, external, approachable face, technical one. And since I joined Kubefirst, I would say it's mostly all the team that can be announced or can be introduced in the same way. But the difference is that it's my job also. Like I am, but it's also my job to do that. And I loved it. So yeah, excited again to be there. And Jared, who's that guy? Jared, Jared, or CTO. I'm late, but I love the background map. I hope so. I hope so. I should probably do a show at some point in my backyard instead of always being stuck in the office. But enough of the presentation. I want to talk infrastructure as code, how to build great infrastructure as code. To do that, we need the technology. And at Kubefirst, we are using Terraform. And I know, Matt, from the things you share on LinkedIn, from your company's blog, you're an OpenTofu person. So I think I don't want to start a battle about technology, but I think it would be nice to discuss, the pros and cons of different technology. Obviously, we have questions from the communities about, the change in licensing from Terraform, the latest acquisition, again, the change in licenses of Terraform.
Yep.
So I don't know if one of you want to start the discussion about Terraform, OpenTofu, but I think that would be a great first topic to start that live stream about IAC.
Yeah, let's do. If I can start just to lay the landscape of the two spaces. At Kubefirst, we've been on a mission to provide instant Kubernetes GitOps platforms that are comprised of the most popular free tools in cloud native. That's our mission. We want you to be able to click a button and have a instant cloud native company for no cost immediately. That's what we're trying to do. In order to construct that platform, we have historically tried to apply some science to it. So we go to the Red Hat surveys, we go to the CNCF surveys, we look at what the trends are in the industry and what is becoming the most popular trends for Ingress, for secrets management, for IAC, for governance, etc. And we try to make the best free services available instantly on that default Kubefirst platform, and that worked great forever. It was all going just peachy, and then HashiCorp made a major shift in their open source license model for Vault and Terraform, and Vault and Terraform are both parts of the Kubefirst platform. Now, the Kubefirst platform is entirely self-hosted, and the Kubefirst OSS platform is also entirely open source. So we're not subject to the Boozle license change, but it does flow down to our end user clients. People that install Kubefirst to run their platform are running HashiCorp products with Terraform and Vault. And we weren't sure what the reaction was going to be from our community. Frankly, I thought everyone was going to panic and run, and some other new up and comer would take over that entire space. And that only partially happened. What ended up happening was a successful fork of both Terraform and Vault. With Terraform, OpenTofu was established. It started out OpenTF, I think, and then it became OpenTofu. And that, I believe, is very widely contributed to across a whole bunch of companies. I'm sure, Matt, you can help us understand a little bit more about that community ecosystem. And then Vault with OpenBow, IBM ended up starting that initiative of establishing that OpenBow fork. And then IBM also bought HashiCorp. And I'm still not sure that all the shoes have dropped or what the long-term future is of all of it. But what I will say is that in our community, we do have folks that express concern. They're not panicked, but they are concerned about what the implications are of a Boozle licensed product on the products that they're building. And so, I'm pretty in tune with the cloud native space. Matt has been in my LinkedIn feed literally since my first ever talk at Denver Startup Week a couple years ago. Matt was there, asked some great questions. I added him to my feed and has had just a lot of really great opinions about what happens when you don't stay on Terraform and what is on the other side of that fence. So I thought it would be a good idea to just have the conversation live. I don't know very much, frankly, about OpenTofu, about the OpenTofu community, about the deltas in syntax, about the deltas in the way that you operate the IAC implementation. Matt, for your edification, I'm sure you're probably already well aware, but we're a Terraform Vault shop. And so our Terraform, we manage either with Crossplane if we GitOps it, or with Atlantis if you want that human element of review on your IAC changes. So I know with the clients that you're setting up OpenTofu for, you probably have all of the same concerns that we have on the Kubefirst platform. So I thought I'd start with just a blanket question, Matt. Like, if you're a Terraform shop, like any of our Kubefirst users are, and you have Terraform and you do GitOps and you have like Vault, for example, if you want to throw Vault into the mix, that might be out of scope for this chat. But like, I want to know like what it takes to go from a Terraform space to an OpenTofu space. Can we start there?
Matt, just before you answer that, I would just want to say, Alec, hello, Alec. Always a pleasure to have you. And a question for Alex: is Boozy license a VSL license or something? I guess it is a VSL license, a business license that HashiCorp decided to use. So yeah, sorry about that. Let's go, Matt. Please take the mic.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, what does it take to kind of go from Terraform to OpenTofu? And I'll touch on a few of the things you said too, just in thinking through like the FUD that goes on around all of this. Really, it doesn't take much. I mean, I think that we have a link to one of our blog posts that is our like OpenTofu early adopters. And I personally wrote that. We made a switch for one of our biggest clients. Sadly, I can't name them. They're a big Fortune 500 enterprise, and we do not have the licensing to mention who they are. But big customer, one of our favorite customers. We've been working for them for a long time. We had huge, over 100 workspaces, so 100 different state files, many different projects, a lot of different infrastructure, all in AWS, ranging from Datadog to GitHub. And we switched them from Terraform to OpenTofu back in, I think that was February that we made the switch. So we were very early, maybe it was March. And then I published that blog post in April. I think that it's going to change where there might be actual changes that you need to make at some point. But for right now, when you make the change from Terraform to OpenTofu, there's very, very little that you need to do is what it comes down to, because it was a direct fork. So at 1.57, they forked, and the languages are exactly the same up till that point, right? They're still able to use the same providers. They don't need to do anything differently with providers. Those are still licensed the same. Even for the ones that HashiCorp owns and manages, those are still, they're just implementations for Terraform for specific like API. So AWS's provider is exactly the same in Tofu as it is in Terraform. And the HCL language that is underneath both of them are the same. That might not always be the case. Tofu does have new functionality that it's trying to upstream to HCL, and I'm pretty sure that hasn't been addressed yet. I don't know if the HashiCorp folks are going to merge that. So there might be some change around the actual underpinning like DSL language. But for right now, everything is pretty much in lockstep. There are new features in both, right? It happens where 1.9 Terraform might introduce something small and new, and OpenTofu is on 1.8 and they are a few months behind, something along those lines. It's usually you'll see some stuff like that, but they are doing different things. For example, Terraform has this idea of stacks, which they're introducing in the Terraform cloud ecosystem. OpenTofu, I haven't heard of any implementation of that. And because it would be, Terraform is building it only for Terraform Cloud. So like there's going to be a new update to the language, but it's only going to be for Terraform Cloud. And that sort of thing, they will diverge. As of today, you need to make very little differences, like very little changes to your code. The only thing that does need to change is that you call a different executable, right? Mm-hmm. You end up running tofu apply instead of Terraform apply. And what that means is, hey, if you're a small operation, or you're a really tight-knit team where you're using Terraform and you're doing all your plans and applies manually on your local machines or in like some bastion host, then you just need to change. Maybe you need to alias, you need to do something very minimal to change how you're executing your infrastructure as code. But if you're using a framework, you're using TerraGrunt, or you're using Terramate or Atmos, or you've written your own pipelines, then you need to go through and change where you've been executing Terraform or how your tool executes Terraform, and you need to update it so that it executes tofu. Most of the frameworks have the capability to do that very easily. In our case, we were using Atmos by Cloud Posse. Really great tool. We really love it. And it was very easy. I had to change maybe like 2 or 3 lines to get it to start executing tofu instead of Terraform. So simple change for us. And we had no issues. That was kind of the mind-boggling thing to me. And again, I kind of like drove home that, hey, this was just a direct fork that they changed around the name and executable name. And they had to re-implement the registry. The small issues that we have had were around like registry availability type of stuff. And we haven't seen it since. It was maybe the first few months where that was the case. So they've really worked out those kinks, and it seems like they have a really well-oiled team. And yeah, I think that's the major things I would call out as like, what does that switch look like? And I can go into the why, but I think the what are the steps is really, hey, you're switching an executable.
Right on. And I think I'm understanding the new space pretty well from that description. What I'm left wondering is if I am a Terraform provider, I have some SaaS API and I want to implement Terraform for it, I'm still registering that with Terraform, right? Like, is that accurate? Like my Terraform, I create a Terraform provider as if I was just a Terraform shop, and then you can use that in OpenTofu. Is that mostly an accurate statement?
So the registries are different. The registries are forked. And it's the case that if you're creating a new provider today, then you probably do need to register it with both. Okay. And there's this very simple process. It's all like Git focused, where, hey, you're pushing a tag and then suddenly that's out in the wild. But I know that one of the things we ran into, and we call out in the blog post I mentioned, is we ran into, hey, we had some small providers like Tailscale and the Postgres provider, which we're using to automate, some third parties that are not essential infrastructure, but we use them as a means by which, so that we don't have any manual steps in creating our infrastructure. When we were using them, we were getting a warning from the OpenTofu registry to say, hey, this provider hasn't uploaded a PGP key to us yet. We don't know 100% if this is encrypted and it's coming from the correct author. Gotcha. It's like they copied over all of the providers and made them available in their registry because they needed to do so. But you basically needed to go through a key, like an encryption process. And now since then, we haven't seen any. So I think that I don't know of any providers that are not in the OpenTofu registry that are only in the Terraform registry. Okay. And I think it is, if you are a provider developer, it is an extremely simple process to be in both registries. And I don't see why you wouldn't do that, because it's just, hey, you have more adoption, you have more usage across both.
Right. Gotcha. Okay. That's super helpful. Let's pivot just a little bit into executing OpenTofu on a platform. I know you've likely got opinions just seeing your opinions from your blog posts and LinkedIn posts. I trust that you're probably big into GitOps and having something that can run your IAC for you. But I don't want to put words in your mouth. Can you give me your like in an OpenTofu world, what is the best way to run and manage your executions of IAC in your opinion?
Yeah. It's a fun question because I think there's just a lot of different ways that people, I don't want to go with the skin the cat analogy, but I'll go with that. There's so many different ways that people do this. I think that it all is, I'm so sorry, Fred. I see you shaking your head.
He's got a cat behind him and everything is fantastic.
I would never skin a cat, people. Okay. But yeah, it's just a saying. But yeah, we've seen 30 different ways that people attack this problem, right? It ranges from, hey, we run it on our local machines and we apply manually, to we run it on a Bastion host, to we run it in GitLab, we run it in GitHub, we run it in Bitbucket, to all the way to the end of the spectrum, which is like high performance, doing everything via one of the tacos frameworks, the Terraform automation collaboration and orchestration software. Like tacos is the big companies are Terraform Cloud, Spacelift, M0, and Scalar, and a number of others that are doing really cool stuff. And also, of course, there's the TerraMate and TerraTeam folks who are doing really cool stuff too. So there's 1,000 different options. In terms of OpenTofu, I think it's exactly the same as Terraform. We usually right size the solution that we recommend according to the size of the organization, how much infrastructure they're managing, how big is their team, and we lean more towards the full SaaS products. So the tacos, we are a big fan of Spacelift. I talk about them a lot, and we're a fan of them because they have a great product, and we just support them. But we also, we've built the pipelines before, like manual pipelines. We've seen a lot of people build their own pipelines for Terraform. And I just think it's not usually the best way to go. That usually is a means by which you're just reinventing the wheel. And to me, it feels like, why waste your engineering efforts on doing it yourself when there's people who are doing, so the one that I didn't even mention, which you folks are using, is Atlantis. And that's a whole other option that I think is solid. I think that's, hey, before you build your own pipelines, go with Atlantis for sure. And I have opinions against Atlantis just because they follow a methodology that I'm not as big of a fan of. But I think it's all about right sizing it for your organization, following the principles that you believe in. Maybe you love apply before merge. Maybe you are really against apply before merge, or you want to do merge after or apply after merge.
Right.
I think that's like a big decision that people need to make, or they need to be aware of. Yeah. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, no, that was awesome. That was awesome. So you already have familiarity with Atlantis, and you're correct that like when you do an Atlantis, and for anybody unfamiliar, I'll just describe it since I love that ecosystem. So whenever you need to make Terraform changes, no matter what is running your Terraform for you, you should have a Git repository that has your Terraform in it, and someone or something has to run it. On the Kubefirst platform, we leverage Atlantis to do that execution of plans and applies on the human's behalf. And what that provides us is it allows the platform team to be able to establish a self-service paradigm for developers to be able to contribute to the IAC story. A platform team can say, hey, we're going to have a module that's a S3 bucket, but the S3 bucket's configured the way that we, as a platform engineering team, want it to be secured and configured. Your job as an engineer at our company is just to ask for one whenever you want one. And maybe there's only 3 variables that you need to provide values for. You have to give it a name, you have to give it a location, and whatever else. And you can sort of build those abstractions and allow your developers to contribute to the IAC story. When a developer wants to, make a change, they submit a pull request to that Git repository that has your Terraform. And then you have an Atlantis YAML file in the repository root that says, keep an eye on these directories. And if something changes in them, run the plan on the behalf of the end user. So there's a webhook in the Git repo that'll fire off to Atlantis. Atlantis will run the plan for you, assuming everything is set up correctly. And then it'll put the plan in the pull request as a comment so that everybody that's involved in the pull request process, which is like the natural flow of things for most changes in code, they can just be in that pull request and say, yeah, that plan looks great. And if you have the approvals and you configure Atlantis to care about approvals, then they can literally type Atlantis apply. And when Atlantis apply is typed, that's actually what I love about Atlantis. So I really want to dig this out with you a little bit. So when you type Atlantis apply in Terraform, your plan is not always honest with you, right? Your plan can say something, for example, like, yeah, of course, I will create a cluster named development for you in this environment. And the plan will show you that it would create it. And then when you go to apply that plan, if there's a cluster with that same name in that same spot, it's going to collide on that resource and it's going to say, no way, buddy. There's already a cluster with the name development. You can't have two clusters with the name development. You're going to have to go back to your IAC and make some kind of a change. And what I love about Atlantis is that during the time period when you're in that state, Atlantis has a lock on that root module in your repository. So nobody else is allowed to make any changes to that directory while you're in that state. And then because you're not typing Terraform commands or anything, you can literally just update your branch with not development, but development 2 or whatever you're going to do. Or maybe you went back into your cloud and said, that cluster actually shouldn't have been there. I'm going to delete it manually. And now there's a clear path for that apply to happen. In either of those cases, you make some change. It's transparent in the pull request. And the user has to say Atlantis plan again, and it'll show you what the new plan is because maybe it was partially applied last time. And then they get another opportunity for an approval. And they type apply, and then in theory, it goes through that time, but it only merges your code once it got through a successful Terraform clean. And that battle that you have to have sometimes in the Terraform world of like actually getting your apply to apply successfully is all transparent in the pull request. So I love everything about all of that stuff. But I confess that I'm not deeply familiar with the other technologies that have come up in the space since Atlantis sort of took that popular hold. And I know that there's some new hot stuff with Spacelift, with EMV0. I don't know how to pronounce that.
M0.
M0. If you could just educate me live on sort of the deltas and what you like about non-Atlantis workflows, I think it would be valuable to all of our viewers and myself selfishly.
and Matt, just before you answer, I have Alec who had kind of like the same question. I'd like to hear Matt's perspective on Atlantis, especially what he doesn't like. I also wanted to know like why you prefer to go the other way around, like merging and applying after. I'm not a huge fan of the common base approval, but it's undoubtedly, I don't know how to say that word in English, convenient. And yet after that, I think my biggest pet peeve is merging without applying, without apply being allowed out of the box. Feel like it should hard block on that. And we're still going to answer you, Alec. It was going on a call. I'll have to jump into dev call in 2 minutes. I know you will watch the rest of the videos, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be an interesting answer, not just for you, but for many folks, myself included. So, yeah, please.
Yeah. So you did a really good job, John, of describing succinctly like what goes into the apply before merge within Atlantis. So I think that was well done. And I don't need to cover that at all. So that's cool. But yeah, the two sides of the coin here are apply before merge, apply after merge, merge and then apply, whatever way you want to call it. And I think that I did a post on this on LinkedIn where I had an opinionated way of thinking about this, and our opinion is the opposite, right? Like we like apply after merge, and I got every I found that it's really pretty solidly split, where there's a really big number of people who are big fans of both on both sides, and I think that apply before merge to me is there's something with that's not GitOps in my mind. Like that doesn't follow the GitOps principle that I view. And I think that leaves it so that you can be in a state where, your main branch is not your source of truth. So I think that's where I inherently go, I don't know if I like this too much. And then I think that the merge after apply, what all that's doing is, hey, on merge, event gets sent, and whatever system is responsible for doing your actual apply gets that event, or is polling your Git repo, and it does the Terraform apply at that moment. Now, to what you were getting at, John, where, hey, plans are not, they don't hit all validation cases, right? Yeah, you can have that cluster that is already named development, and your plan can tell you, hey, we're going to create this cluster named development. And then when you actually go to apply it, boom. And it will fail. And then you actually end up needing to have to do another pull request to maybe change the name of your cluster, or you have to go into the console, delete that cluster, and then, apply. But I think that, Eric Osterman from Cloud Posse commented on my thread on LinkedIn, and I'll try and dig up the link to that later. But he put it really succinctly, where and I'll butcher it now. But I think it's a process issue when you have a lot of those issues that happen at apply time. It means that you're likely your state isn't small enough, or you don't have enough validation at some other layer in the chain to be helping you avoid those types of issues. Like I think that when you have infrastructure as code set up with best practices, and you have it moving in like a well-oiled machine, a lot of those issues don't occur. And what you want to do, like what we find, is that we like kind of use that as a learning tool of like, okay, we ran into this apply issue. How can we help avoid this in the future? Maybe we just need to be doing dev applies for this set of infrastructure locally, so that we give we need a sandbox that our engineers can apply locally. And I think that that's the type of thing that can be really useful. Like if you're going, everything needs to be driven by the pull request workflow, I think that can be limiting. I both, like from a purist standpoint, I love it, but I also think that there are better ways to have things with like a sandbox environment that you allow your infrastructure engineers to really, or your platform engineers, whatever you want to call everybody, you can enable them to really be able to test their changes without having to go through that process, and then they can get their code right without having, while still staying true to like GitOps, that methodology where, hey, your source of truth is this main branch. And I think that's really important to me. And I think that there's also something where with the way, if you run into an apply error in your pull request and you deal with those errors by a sequential set of commits, that sequential set of commits that's enabling you to get that infrastructure to a state where a successful apply goes through, is that rolling out across all of your infrastructure, or is that rolling out across your dev or your stage environment? And you still need to apply that code to your prod environment. And are you set up to then do those sequential set of steps that you needed to do in your changes in your PR to make that apply go through? Are you set up to do those for prod? Like, I think that there's a lot of delicacy there that goes into you're trying to reach this desired state. Yeah. And if you're taking the I'm going to do commit after commit after commit to get my pull request and my code into a state that it's applicable, sometimes that's not applicable for every environment or for all of your infrastructure. And now you have code that might not be, you might go to try and apply it outside of Atlantis or something along those lines that ends up getting you burnt.
Right.
And that's the thing that we see as like, I see it as a process thing. I see it as a code smell almost, not like it's, I don't fully disagree with it though too. I don't want to like, I'm less dogmatic about it than I used to be, because I see where people are coming from, and I get your point, John. Like, you like the workflow, and I think that that's reasonable. But yeah, I think it's one of those things where it depends on the situation. Yeah. Does that make sense?
It makes a ton of sense, and it was a great answer. And I do like the Atlantis workflow, but there are times where I hate the Atlantis workflow, frankly. For example, cluster management on Kubefirst. We do not use Atlantis for cluster management. We want GitOps for cluster management, for the establishment of your workload clusters and the applications in those workload clusters. Like we have built a system where you can establish a directory that's like a fleet template of how you want your workload clusters constructed, that includes your Terraform IAC, that's wrapped in Crossplane with a Terraform Crossplane provider. And then once you have that infrastructure, you can just naturally continue that GitOps orchestration and sync waves, so that you get, in a single shot, you get your infrastructure, and then you get your trifecta of Ingress Nginx, Cert Manager, external DNS with your cert issuers, and then like whatever the usual suspects are that go into all those foundational tools that go into every single one of your workload clusters. Like, you can have it all inclusive of the infrastructure in a single shot, in a single commit to the main branch of your GitOps repository. And then boom, you have a cluster. And then if you wait 30 Mississippi, boom, you have all the applications in that cluster. And that's an incredible experience. And then when it comes time to destroy that cluster, if you care about cluster workload lifecycle stuff, like when you go to delete a GitOps oriented cluster, if it's all truly GitOps, including the infrastructure, then you get to say, I want to delete this thing. And it'll go back, at least in Argo CD, it'll go backward down the orchestration order of operations until all the apps are torn down from the application, from the cluster cleanly. And then the cluster goes away. And there's no, all you had to do was, like in that particular case, it's all a very rigid structure. Like it's our cluster management product. And GitOps is just incredibly powerful to have at that layer, to be able to drive commits directly to a main branch of a GitOps repository and have stuff come to life, and to be able to tear it down by just removing stuff in a GitOps repo. So I do love the GitOps, merge first paradigm a lot. There's a ton to like about it. In the community, what I hear folks say, I hear folks say everything, but the common trends is that folks want a human involved in the decision-making process of should the production cluster be destroyed? And Crossplane and Atlantis follow very different paradigms in that regard. So Crossplane is a control plane. It runs in your management cluster. It's watching some Terraform code, and it's watching the resources that it's responsible for with that Terraform code. And it's measuring a drift, right? It's measuring if there's something that it has to do. And if the main branch says it should be this desired state, and that matches your cloud, or whatever it is that you're configuring, then it'll just be doing nothing. It'll be trying all the time to do nothing, and checking and checking and checking, but it's going to do nothing when everything's right. But if you're susceptible to, say, a crossplane bug, which is real life in software, crossplane could decide, I'm going to destroy this cluster. There's a difference here. I've decided on my own that I would destroy this because, for whatever reason, the state that I'm measuring against in the actual state in the cloud or in the app, I don't think anymore that they're in alignment, and I have to destroy this thing. And there's no human involved. There's no pull request involved. It's just going to destroy that thing, which is terrifying to a lot of folks. So we have a paradigm at Kubefirst where, for like clusters like that are managed in GitOps, if you want to eject out of GitOps into Atlantis so that there's always a human involved in that pull request flow, then you can just orphan your Crossplane and use the same Terraform and just add it to your Atlantis YAML. And then Atlantis is managing it instead. And Crossplane, you don't carry that risk of like GitOps going haywire. So I wanted to throw that story on the table and just kind of throw it over to you, Matt. Just like, do you hear people with those concerns? Does it depend on the operator that's responsible for doing the applies? And do you have any sort of words of wisdom or words of warning about sort of those risks of letting GitOps manage your infra and being able to destroy a prod cluster or whatever?
Yeah, I definitely have some thoughts. I think I'll share where we see this come up, and then I do want to talk about Crossplane and your folks' system.
Yeah, let's do.
So yeah, where we see this come up a lot is people with their RDS databases. They're like, how can we manage RDS database, or like how can we manage our whole data tier, which is like very critical to the operations of our business? Like, how can we manage that via infrastructure as code when it could so easily be destroyed? And people get concerned about that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there's been a number of things both at the, API layer and like that have trickled down into the providers that always make us feel very comfortable around that, where you can turn off you can turn on for S3 buckets and for RDS databases, at least in AWS, you have the ability to turn on like, hey, this resource is delete protected or destroy protected. I don't remember exactly. You have to like go through a force process to actually delete those resources.
Gotcha.
So it's difficult to do from Terraform, or it's difficult to do even from the console where you need to have, you have to be very explicit, like, yes, this thing needs to go. And I think that we always feel comfortable around that. And then when it comes to resources in prod, that maybe it's an application cluster or it's not a data tier service, it's like, hey, if we can delete it this fast, we can likely bring it up pretty damn fast. So if you do feel very wary of that type of thing, I both understand it, but then also would say, hey, we can probably bring it back pretty damn quick if we're doing things well. Now, and I think that's the way I at least think about that set of problems that you're getting at. And I think that with Crossplane, I don't know, I trust with a GitOps tool that it's going to read Git and it's not going to have that bug. You could have the junior engineer who puts up a pull request that renames the Terraform folder, and then Crossplane's looking for a certain folder, and then that's gone. But that's one of the beautiful things about GitOps is that, hey, everything should be at a pull request level, and you're only able to get that applied or get that change in if you're approved. And I think that that's kind of the beauty, is that, hey, you can create annoying business processes, build them into Git, build them into that PR approval lifecycle, and you now have stuff that we all know as engineers is easy to do. We can enforce pull requests for approvals from certain teams or whatever that enable you to ensure that certain things are done correctly, or make sure that, hey, at least somebody can be, I don't want to say scolded. We don't do that. But you at least know what mistake you made, and you can learn from that moving forward.
Yeah, 100%.
So I think that's general thoughts. I don't know. And I have this thing with you folks in Atlantis, though. It's interesting that you provide this escape hatch where you can take people out of Crossplane and over to Atlantis. I like that. It's good that you did that, because I think that it can be a little concerning, and I would definitely see certain customers of ours who have been really wary of infrastructure as code managing their critical resources. I think for you folks, the one thing that we think about a lot with customers is like, hey, what's the minimum number of tools that we can introduce so that we can decrease complexity, so that we can keep things, we can get everything that we need done, and we can really enable the most value while also not having it be this really complex type of system that we're providing to a customer at the end of the day and saying, hey, here's all this work we did here, good luck running it.
Right.
We want to feel confident when we pass something to a customer. So we actually did a really big investigation into Crossplane. Veronica on my team, she's my senior engineer. She's been working for me for a number of years. She's awesome. Went all in. And I was so excited because it went for that full GitOps story. And I was really, kind of thinking like, oh, maybe Masterpoint becomes a cross-plane consulting firm. Like this could be the new thing.
Right.
And then we ended up, doing a full proof of concept, managing our own AWS infrastructure. And we found, hey, the way the cross-plane language works is kind of kludgy. So like, yes, you can manage Terraform, but then we have multiple tools in the chain and you're doing orchestration of Terraform. And to us, we wanted cross-plane to be more than that.
Yeah.
And it was a difficult sell for us, and we ended up passing on it. And there's a blog post I think I shared the link on for that. But I think that with you folks being on Atlantis, that makes a ton of sense because you have a bunch of infrastructure that you want to manage, and then more closely, and then you have a bunch of infrastructure that you want to manage more individually, like or more automated, and that's where you use Crossplane.
Yeah.
I could see you folks being really big on Terraform controller,
Okay.
which is now maybe renamed to Tofu controller. Have you ever seen that, John?
Is that a Flux product?
So Weaveworks, before they shut down, sadly, they built Terraform controller, and
Okay.
now that Weaveworks has shut down, it is I believe the name has been changed to Tofu controller because they're all in on it being open source.
Awesome.
And it's still maintained. I'm not sure how much. We did an investigation into it because, again, I was really excited. I was thinking like, hey, maybe this is the end all be all way that we tell everyone that they should do automation for everything. Like if you're in a Kubernetes native world and that's what you're working with, then it could be really great because it's just an operator that says, hey, I have a Terraform workspace and I want this to be continuously checked, and here's the directory it's at. And it's basically what you have with Crossplane, but it's a little bit less. It's not trying to do as much. So therefore you have a simpler system to maintain, and you have the choice between, hey, I want manual applies, where very similar to what you have with Atlantis, and I have automated applies, very similar to the way you have with Crossplane. And I think that there's, I don't know, when I look at your folks' system, that's the thing that I would be like thinking about is like, hey, could we decrease the overall things that people need to know about? Yeah. Like if you need to go, if I had people in the Kubefirst community asking me a ton of questions about Atlantis and a ton of questions about Crossplane language, how do I pass this variable between these two states? That type of stuff can get complicated. And if you can limit that amount of operational complexity and, the amount of, what is it? Like the number of things you have to juggle in your head.
Load. Yeah.
Cognitive load. Thank you. I wasn't going to think of it, but yeah, that amount of cognitive load, I feel like that's like a really big benefit to an overall simplicity and the ability to operate infrastructure as a whole. I don't know. I'm going down a rabbit hole here. I think those are my thoughts though.
Yeah, I loved it. And with Crossplane, overall, so I first of all, it's exciting to hear you express that you had that same excitement that we had about the promise of Crossplane. The promise of GitOps is obviously revolutionary for any Kubernetes shop, and seeing the value that.
I'm gonna switch to sunglasses. I'm getting roasted out here. Hope you all don't mind.
Yeah, we're gonna have to wrap this up. So, getting into the world of Crossplane, we thought that we heard rumors that that it wasn't production ready. If you ask 100 people, at least 50 of them will at least echo those words to you. And we kind of walked into it a bit arrogantly, and we were like, yeah, but we can do anything.
We'll make it work.
Crossplane is going to be great. And for the most part, it has been great. It's almost perfect. I can say those words. There are edge cases that can make you worry about things. And if you ever see one of those, and you're lucky enough that it's just some stupid development resource that you can destroy and get right back, then, maybe you shrug your shoulders. But when you're trying to go to sleep at the end of the day, you're worried. You are. And so I've been we think about how to solve how to protect our end users, period. So it's like, and we've considered multiple angles. There's the Kubernetes angle, or the governance angle, where you can say, look, we're going to do policy as code. And you can have a label on your cluster or your resources in Kubernetes, and you can say, listen, I don't care what Crossplane thinks. I don't want anything with the label production destroyed without X, Y, and Z. And that's great. And that is also very GitOps, particularly with Kubernetes. So I feel like there's like a world that's soon to blossom where Kubernetes could, provide that governance so that everyone can sleep at night. But in my heart of hearts, what do I do with my production cluster? We just migrated clouds. Our production cluster just left one cloud and went to another cloud. You can close your eyes and use your imagination, I'm sure. And when we created our production and our management cluster, the very first thing we did was eject out of Crossplane and adopt it in Atlantis, because I want to see it every time. Maybe it's old school, maybe it's a lack of trust. I'm not sure what it is, but that's what we do, and it's production, and production always wins. Really interesting.
We do the same. I think it's legit. Like there's no. I don't think there should be any shame towards like a GitOps purist method if you want to be able to hit the confirm button for your production resources. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all going to be the ones who get called, right? So,
yeah, and I'm sure to a large extent, it depends on what production is to you. I'm sure to some shops, production is just another ephemeral cluster that if anything goes wrong, you can toast it and have another one. And if that's your business model, nobody's going to stop you. There are some places that are wildly compliant required and have to do all kinds of crazy stuff just to be able to delete or create infrastructure. So, and I'm sure there's everything in between, but I don't know. I feel like through this chat, I got a really good understanding of the world that you've been living in. And that's super valuable, not just to me, but to everybody that's kind of familiar with the Kubefirst ecosystem. So really appreciate your insights and knowledge in the IAC space. Want to pay you the compliment right back that there are many right answers to running exceptional infrastructure as code. And frankly, the reason you were handpicked to come onto the show is because while your ideas are counter to the end result that we landed on, your discipline is spot on in alignment with ours. And so I really just consider you one of the better, more thoughtful folks in the cloud native space. And for all our viewers that are looking for a good addition to your LinkedIn feed, I don't think you could do any better than Matt Gowie. But in any event, really appreciate you coming on the show and duking it out with us. Yeah, it was a fun chat.
That was an amazingly quick 55 minutes. I kind of looked up. You could have told me that 25 minutes had passed, and I would have
I couldn't
fully
believe
accepted
either.
that. So maybe we'll have to do this again. But yeah, it's been great to chat, and I'm more than happy to talk about these types of topics. It's always just this is fun, right?
Yeah,
these are. We always learn something, and I think I learned something from hearing you talk through why you like that apply first, apply before merge. That helped me understand it a little bit better too. It's been a while since I've been in that environment, so yeah, appreciate y'all. It was a fun time.
Yeah, same here. Fred,
Thanks. John is like,
you
Fred.
know what this means.
I know. So, yeah, thanks, Matt, for being on the show. But before I let you go, I have a question for both of you. Sorry. Why did the constant break up with the variable? They were in a relationship, so why did the breakup?
Why did the constant break up with the variable?
It got let go. I don't know.
What'd you have, Matt? I need to hear it.
I said it got let go.
It got let
I don't-
go.
Because I was thinking of JavaScript where you have const and then let.
Yeah,
I don't know.
That's
Yeah.
a
that
fun play.
was a good answer. But yeah, why did the constant break up with the variable? It's because they change.
Oh. Okay. I
Oh,
like it.
I
oh,
know.
Oh.
No
I know.
constants in well, no, there are all variables are constants in Terraform and Tofu. So yeah. All
Yeah.
variables. Yeah.
Don't overthink that. That's part of the show. A bad developer joke. So I give myself
I like it.
permission to do those, even if I'm not a dad. But yeah, now they're part of the show now. And I was just telling the team before the show, I was like running out of like jokes to tell. It's not to always tell the new jokes, but I found a bunch of new ones. So be prepared, folks. I still have a lot of really bad developers jokes for the upcoming shows. And speaking of which, super excited about the next shows. All the Kubefirst team, we're going to be at CVO Navigate. That's going to be an amazing week. So in 2 weeks, we're going to be there. The event is on the 10 and 11 of September. It's in Berlin. If you are in Berlin, let us know. We have a discount for you if you want to join the conference. If there is still availabilities and with the tickets. If you are at CVO Navigate, we're going to have a booth. We are a sponsor. Please come say aye. As I said, all the teams going to be there. Going to be quite exciting, and we're going to take that opportunity to cross our finger. Everything should be aligned to that. We're going to have that opportunity to do Kubefirst Live with some of the speakers, some of the sponsors is going to be there to talk about the experience at the conference, what we learned, what we talked about, and that should be a different shows than what we usually do, different format, but still, laid back and fun and about cool techs we like. So looking forward for this one.
Yeah,
I'm jealous. Y'all
You
getting
should
the
come
full
out.
team together for Berlin. I love Berlin. I spent a few months living there, and it's an awesome town.
Oh, you live there?
Dad,
It'll be a blast.
I've never been to Berlin, and I'm going to need a tour guide. You should come out.
Yeah, maybe we can talk about that, because honestly, I love that town, and I have been thinking I have to do the Masterpoint retreat. We're gonna get my whole team together next year, so
awesome.
we're planning it now. I feel like I have multiple team members who have been to Berlin, so I feel like they'll probably be like, "No, we should go somewhere new." But maybe I'll have a stopover in Berlin. Anyway,
Berlin's always good. I've been there two, 3 times, and I'm still looking forward to go back next 2 weeks. So
yeah. Y'all will have a blast. Cool.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your vacation with us. Really appreciate you popping
it was a pleasure, y'all.
coming on the show.
Cool.
And we'll absolutely have you on sometime soon.
Cool.
Real pleasure, man.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Pleasure, folks.
Thanks everyone who was watching live. Thanks for the people watching the recording, and see you in 2 weeks.